So we've never had any black man, black woman in any executive office, the governor's office, the attorney general, all the other statewide elected offices. So recognizing that history when we launched the campaign, I certainly knew that we would have to present something compelling and different to get people engaged and support our campaign.
Hey, Grill fam, it's Jaron Keith, Gainer White House correspondent and managing editor of politics at theGrio. And I'm here with Nick Brown, who is a Democratic candidate for Attorney General in the state of Washington. Nick, welcome to theGrio. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jaron. It's good to be here. Appreciate it.
So you have spent your career as an attorney, as a judge advocate general for the U.S. Army. Why did you decide to run for Attorney General in Washington?
Well, it certainly wasn't an easy question or easy decision to make when I decided to launch the campaign last year. I was previously serving as the U.S. Attorney for Western Washington, so the lead Department of Justice representative here in Western Washington, where Seattle is based. And I really loved the job, but as I started thinking about, the impact that you could have as the next Attorney General, running a statewide office, the help that you could do for the people in my home state of Washington, and also the potential to have national impact. I was really drawn by that. I felt like if we ran the right campaign, we could win and we could really, help improve the lives of folks and here people in the state of Washington. So I was really excited to do it.
Your campaign is unique in that if you are successful, you would become the first Black man to ever be elected as Attorney General in Washington. Given that context, what does that mean to you if you were able to accomplish such a feat?
Yeah, well, I mean, not only would I be the first Black Attorney General, I'd be the first Black statewide elected official in any office outside of the Supreme Court. So we've never had any Black man, Black woman in any executive office, the governor's office, the attorney general, all the other statewide elected offices. So, recognizing that history when we launched the campaign, I certainly knew that we would have to present something compelling and different to get people engaged and support our campaign. But this is my home state. This is where I grew up. It's a state that I love, and I love the idea of making history, not just to be the first, but to bring, perspective as a Black man to the office, to try to improve the way that we do justice in this state, to give people who are younger and thinking about what they can do in their career an opportunity to see someone in those offices. I certainly, throughout my legal career as a younger lawyer, looked ahead and looked above to see people in office and to see that other people were doing jobs that I could aspire to was really helpful for me. When I saw Eric Holder become the Black Attorney General and others follow in his steps, that was important for me to see what was possible. So it's both changing the perspective of the job and giving people inspiration about what can be possible in their own lives.
Our viewers might not know, but you are a fellow Morehouse College graduate. We have
That's
that
right.
in common. But tell me more about your story. Who is Nick Brown, and what do you want Washington voters to know about you?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And definitely respect and shout out to Morehouse for giving me the opportunity to be here in many ways. As I said, I grew up here. I was born in California, but my father was in the Army for most of his career and most of my life. And so he was stationed up here right outside of Seattle, about an hour south. So I was raised here. Both my parents were public servants and involved in public life. And really so all throughout my life, my parents were encouraging me to try to have an impact on the community, to give a damn about what was happening around me, to participate in any way I could. So as a young person, I was that kid, running for student body president and trying to be involved in student government, and really all throughout my life did that path. When I left here, I went off to Morehouse College, went on an Army ROTC scholarship to pay for college, and then went straight to law school at Harvard and started my legal career, as you mentioned in the beginning, as an Army JAG lawyer. So I was serving active duty in the Army all across the world, spent a year in Baghdad, Iraq, during the Iraqi War, and then eventually came back here and switched in the Army to being a prosecutor. And through my 21, 22 years as a lawyer, I've been mostly a public sector lawyer, working for the Department of Justice, working for the Army, served as general counsel for Governor Inslee, the governor of Washington, during his first term. And I really just, when I started working in Olympia, recognized how much impact that you could have a state and local level. I'd been paying attention to what was happening in DC or not happening in Congress, and got down to Olympia and realized the things that I cared about were being most impacted down there, which really helped drive me to want to run here. But in addition to those things, I'm a father. I've got two young kids. I try to maintain as much connection and involvement with them. I'm a soccer dad. I coach my son's soccer team. Both my kids are doing Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts. So I'm pretty involved in any free time that I have, just helping raise them.
That's awesome. You skipped over an interesting part of your resume, and that is you competed in Survivor. You
Right.
don't often see reality competition show competitors running for office. Tell us about that experience, and how do you think perhaps that prepared you for this run for Attorney General?
Yeah, I mean it is a unique part of my resume, and I'm definitely an old school OG Survivor contestant. So when I was in law school, the very first season of Survivor came out, and now reality television is so much part of our pop culture. But back then it was the brand new. There was nothing else on the network that was called reality television other than MTV Real World. So when Survivor, the first season came out, I was really intrigued just by the idea of and the concept of the game of going out into the middle of nowhere and competing with other people. So when I was in law school, I applied for season two of Survivor. By that time, the first season had become sort of this, water cooler pop culture phenomenon, and so the second season that I got on was really big. It was, the number two watch show in America that year. And it was great. So I took a semester off of law school, went out and played this crazy game, and then came back and finished law school and went on with my life. I never aspired to be anything other than what I was on the path to being, but I loved the adventure and the excitement and craziness of doing this reality TV show. I don't know if it's really impacted how I think about the campaign, other than being on the show was the first exposure that I had really had to being a public person. And you walk down the street, people recognize you, people take pictures with you. Thankfully, when I was on the show, social media didn't really exist, and so I wasn't too caught up in all the madness that comes with that. But I do think it shows a little bit about my personality that I like an adventure. I want to do something different, not afraid to change course and make some big decisions. So I look back at my time on Survivor fondly, but I was on season two. I think now they're on season 46. So they've been pumping out a lot of shows since I was on it.
And Washington has a really small Black population. But w how would you describe the state of racial equality in the state of Washington? And what's your agenda in terms of racial equity?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, our Black population statewide is fairly small. And even in Seattle, our largest city, it's less than 10% of the population. We do have a lot of diversity from Asian American community, Latina community has really grown as well. A big influx of Indian Americans as well. And so I think of this as definitely a pretty diverse area, but we are historically a very white city and state, and certainly our politics has been dominated by white folks. It's interesting because Seattle's a very liberal city. The state of Washington has been politically blue as a state for a very long time. I think we have the longest serving Democratic governor in the country. So it's been over 30 years since we've elected a Republican in the governor's office. But our politics, I think, are much closer. Even though we've been consistently blue on a national and statewide level, it still remains more in the middle than I think a lot of people recognize. So, running as the first, to trying to be the first Black statewide elected brings that added challenge, that added dynamic of people have never seen this before or someone like me before. So I just try to stay authentic to my message, to my values, and talk about my story, which I think resonates with a lot of people. Being a veteran and being the former U.S. attorney gives me a lot of opportunity to talk to people outside of the traditional Democrat progressive perspective. I am definitely a Democrat and think of myself as a progressive in many ways, but the background at least gives people more willingness to listen to my story. And I hope to bring my story and my community story to the office. So often people from Black and brown communities in particular don't have their voices heard. And I think to make change, you need both people in offices where they can make decisions, but you also need a very strong community voice, a very strong activist participation from folks that don't have power or don't have access like that. And so part of my job will be to harness that, to give people access, to be a sounding board, myself and my team, to make sure we're understanding all the issues that people are facing across the state. We dealt with a lot of the same issues that people were dealing nationwide, particularly around criminal justice issues. But we've got a long way to go to fully be inclusive and to fully include people's voices and to make sure we're not ignoring people that have been ignored for generations.
As it relates to Black Americans, we have seen a wave of legislative attacks really on Blackness, on banning Black history, altering Black history and how it's taught in public schools. We're seeing lawsuits challenging DEI programs beyond the overturning of affirmative action in college admissions by the Supreme Court last year. What do you make of the state of race in America in terms of policy, and what role do you think considered blue states like Washington can play in this apparatus?
Yeah, well, we're certainly going in the wrong direction. I mean, for all the reasons that you've highlighted, the history of America, the true history of America, disregarded, ignored, not or completely falsified. This has been an ongoing priority and effort, I think, for folks across the country. And we often think about these at a national level, but these efforts have been from the local level, from school boards and rising up, and it's been a pendulum that is shifting in the wrong direction. Obviously, former President Trump has, I think, further empowered people to be blatantly racist, to be led by their own grievances or fears or hatred for other folks. But that is not just him; it's a whole party that has shifted that way in recent years, and that's a very scary proposition. What I try to do always is we often, I think, get distracted or too focused on just what's happening in the presidency or just what's happening in DC. And I think the more that we can turn to state and local efforts, the more success that we'll have, because most of the things that I think we care about as Black Americans or any sort of American are really being decided at a state and local level.
Any final words for voters in Washington as you continue your campaign trail?
Well, I think our campaign is going really well. I've been really encouraged by our support across the state, and to have so many people that I meet with supportive of our campaign is great. But we need to continue to pay attention to state and local levels. I do think these are the offices that most impact the things that we're working on. And we got to keep working and earn people's votes and hearing from people in Washington about what they want to see in the next Attorney General. But I think we're going to win if we keep working hard. And I'm excited about being the first Black person in Washington state history to hold executive office.
Nick Brown, Democratic candidate for Attorney General in the state of Washington. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Darren. It's good to see you.